I was thinking about stuff that's been going on in the UK, and I came to the realization, or it's been said lots of times, that statism is a religion. And it's kind of like, you know, when you call things a religion, like there's obviously a big stigma to that, because like you're saying that it's not something that's rational and it's faith-based, and you know, etc., etc. And so I'd always accepted the you know, that when someone says, "Oh, statism is a religion," you know, I was just basically thinking of it in terms of a critique that's like, you know, people just don't want to think about it. But I hadn't actually realised that it really kind of is. Because, so there was a thing recently in the UK about some guy got sentenced to prison for praying outside an abortion clinic. So, you know, that's a whole can of worms in itself about, you know, abortion and all that. But I'm not going to talk about that aspect today at all, because that's not what it's about. So what this guy did apparently is that he actually said a silent prayer, which is like basically you say it in your head. And because of that, he, you know, it was a hate crime and all this, and you know, so he's been actually sentenced to jail time. Now, what's kind of incredibly crazy about that is that what's being said is that the state is telling you what you can and can't say in your mind. Okay? So you might say that it's egregious for someone to go out and say hateful things, and you know, maybe, you know, say things that would scare people, or you know, I'm not saying it's not that it's my position, you know, we're not even talking about what my position on free speech is right now. But what's the issue is, so this guy, this guy is prosecuted just for saying words in his head. So the thing with this is, it ties in, you know, into a bunch of things that like I've been talking about here for a while. So, you know, it's like, so why is this a problem to the state? Well, because it's like, it's blasphemy, because you're praying to another God that isn't the state. You know, so the state's saying that something, a certain behaviour is allowed, and a person, an individual, who thinks that it's not allowed because his religion, which isn't the state, says that he can't, you know, it says that it's not right or whatever. That was his like personal opinion. So the fact that has some other belief other than the state is what he's getting punished for. Now that's a blasphemy law. You know, so if you have a blasphemy law, you know, because you're speaking to some other God that isn't the one that you're being told to speak to, then, you know, you can only have a blasphemy law about religion. And so if you're transgressing against the state in your head, it was a silent prayer, you know, whether you believe in God or whatever, that's not the point. There's no actual difference between praying and just saying words in your head. You know, whether you think that there's someone on the other end of like the cosmic telephone listening to you, that's irrelevant. It's like, you know, if you want to blow yourself up for a God and, you know, take people with you, you know, kill the people when you're doing it, you're not judged on the fact whether that God exists or not, or, you know, whether you believe in that God or anything like that. You're just not allowed to do it. You know, and rightly so. So, what's the difference with this? Why is this? And so, for those who haven't seen any of these videos before, you know, I'm a voluntarist. You know, I believe in self-ownership. I believe basically that self-ownership is the fundamental right from which all other rights are derived. You know, if you don't have self-ownership, then, you know, nothing else can be derived from it. That's why, you know, that's why slavery is wrong. Not because it's like mean to like make someone do what you want them to do. It's because you've got no right to own that person. Because the only person who has a right to that ownership is the person themselves. So, as taking self-ownership as the fundamental right, then, I mean, basically, you don't have a right to anything apart from, you know, that which is, you know, explained in natural law. So, like, a right is basically, Mark Passio talks about this. He's made this, you know, he's done like even a film about it called What is Natural Law? And, you know, basically a right is anything that you can do that doesn't harm someone else. But, you know, inversely, it's like you don't have a right to absolutely anything that means that someone else has to do something for you. Because otherwise you can't. It's like the whole reason that like you don't have a right to medical treatment isn't because like, you know, the reason I'm saying that isn't because like I'm so meanie and I don't want people to have free medical treatment or whatever like that. You know, it'd be absolutely wonderful if, you know, the fairies just came and like gave everyone magical treatment. But the point is, to get medical treatment, a person needs to give it to you. And if it's a right, then it means that, you know, you've got to have it, that's got to be bestowed on you. But you can't, what if nobody wants to be a doctor? Or what if nobody wants to treat you because, you know, nobody likes you or whatever? It doesn't matter. You don't have the right to force anyone else to do something. So like that's why you don't have the right to medical treatment. That's why you don't have the right to a house. So you have the right to be allowed to build a house. You know, if you've got land and you've got materials and, you know, you have the right to build on your land. You know, no one can stop that. But you don't have the right for someone to, you know, to make someone build you a house, which is just equivalent of, you know, if the whole reason that taxation really is theft is because you shouldn't have things taken off you if you don't consent to it. It's all consent. You know, it's the difference between rape and making love. You know, it's the difference between like commerce and stealing. It's consent. And so if we have consent all the way down, then suddenly, what's the difference between taxation and theft? And like as the meme goes, magical fairy dust. Because, you know, that's just what theft means. And I've had this conversation with people, and it's crazy. It's like I said to them, in fact, I actually said to someone, so if I steal money off you, but give you a sandwich that you didn't ask for, if I take money off you and give you a sandwich that you didn't ask for in return, is that stealing? And I even said no. It's like, you know, how does that even work? But you know, most reasonable people, when you talk about this and you ask them, if I just take money off you and give you something that you didn't ask for, is that stealing? Everyone goes, yeah, of course it is. What are you talking about? Crazy person. Because it is, it'd be stealing. But that's exactly what happens with the state and taxes. And the point is, it's like, I think people get bogged down in this discussion when I'm saying things like, oh, taxation is theft, it's not because I don't believe that, it's not because I wouldn't voluntarily give a portion of my income to like make things better. I would, because I give to charity. But the whole point is that I'm forced to give it. I mean, I can't remember, there was a famous slave who, you know, went after, he was, you know, an American slave, and he was made free, obviously, when that all finished. And he couldn't believe that he was being taxed on his income. And he was like, hold on a minute. So when I was working and everything that I produced was taken off me, that was called slavery. And I thought that I wasn't a slave anymore. But you're telling me that when I now work and I still have some portion of it taken away from me. He's like, why isn't that slavery? So it was just completely clear to him that it was that is what you call slavery. But we're kind of sort of, well, I mean, we're indoctrinated basically from, you know, as soon as we're born, you know, and we're told that, you know, like, we just assume that the state is the norm, and it is what's happened historically for like the longest time. But that doesn't mean that it has to be like that. It's like one of my daughters in history right now is studying feudalism, and so to her it's like this kind of crazy concept of like, well, hold on, you've got the king who's meant to be in charge, but he's not really, because at each of the levels of like the nobility, then you have the section that swears allegiance to like the section above. So like, you know, there's a hierarchy to nobility, and like, you know, you've got a count and then a marquess is like below a count, so I don't know, whatever. It's not something I'm interested in. But the point is, you have this pyramidal structure of people that, you know, answer to their immediate boss. And what else happens? Well, the land gets divided up and given out to like for certain nobles to manage. And the people that live there are just chattel. I mean, that's what it means, chattel. They just like come with the land. They're the ones who are going to do all the work, and they just come with the land. You own them. That's like part of the property. And so to my daughter, excuse me, this just seems like crazy. No, how can that be? But it's like, you know, what's the difference now? This isn't something I talk to her about, because, you know, she's 13 and I'm not going to start telling her about, do you realise, you know, and another thing, you know, what we've basically got now is like another different type of pyramidal scheme, where, you know, the layers report to the other layers. But at the bottom, although we're not tied physically to where we live, but we're essentially the serf class, who like give up to 50% of everything that we do gets passed up to the state. and the state, you know, does with it as it wants. And at the same time, there's, you know, that'd be bad enough if we were just like literally left in peace. You know, if it was just like, like in A Bug's Life, the Disney film. So you've got a load of ants, and what happens at the end of the summer is the locusts, the grasshoppers come in, and they demand half the food, and of course, like they say, you know, we'll keep you safe, and you give us, you know, 50% of the food, and we'll make sure that the bigger insects don't come and get you. And so, like, basically the ants, you know, even though there's more of them, they're just like, have to work all summer like mad to make sure that they've got, you know, 50% to give away. And that's just like, that's what we are. You know, that's just, you know, we're being provided with stuff that we're not like asking for. And, but we're getting, you know, you give me 50% of your income and I'll give you all this stuff, and say, well, you know, maybe I don't want exactly that, maybe I don't really want, you know, weapons being sent overseas to kill other innocent people, you know what I mean? I don't want to pay for that, but I have to, because that's just the way it works. And it's always worked like that. And so getting back to the original point of, you know, this guy praying. So the only way that you can believe that that's like morally right is the same way that you believe that, you know, something from the Bible is morally right. Even though it might not make any like logical sense, but you think, well, this is a higher cause, you know, so, you know, this is what God said, and God, you know, God is God. That's why we love God and we pray to God, and, you know, we do what He says, even though it might not make, you know, we might not quite get it. Why are we doing this? Well, you know, God says, so that's good enough for me. And that's basically where it comes to with all these like laws of, you can't say this in your mind, because why? Well, because the state, and, you know, the state is the arbiter of the ultimate good, and you can only, the only way that you can accept that is if you actually have faith and you believe in the state as some kind of like omnipotent other thing, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't work. And so there's lots of things contained within the state that if you hadn't noticed, they're directly pointing to the fact that this is a religion. I mean, there's so many religious ceremonies to do with the state. I mean, they're not called religious ceremonies, but, you know, the fact that like people have special costumes to fulfill special roles within the state, you know, surely that's like a big giveaway. You know, you've got like a judge, you know, so why is he dressed in a funny way? Why do policemen and like law enforcement have like this special, you know, this special symbol that's endowed on them by the state? You know, that's what the whole badge thing is. Why does certain, you know, a certain class have certain rights that other people don't? You know, so why can some people carry guns and use force, and like other people can't? You know, that's not, you know, that's like, you know, I was raised a Catholic. There were certain things, there were certain powers that the priest had because he was ordained that he could do. And even if I did all the same things, it wouldn't be the same. I couldn't, you know, I can't like do something, I can't transubstantiate a Eucharist just by saying all the exact same words as a priest. You know, it doesn't happen like that, it doesn't work. Because the priest has gone through a certain, you know, he's ordained by God, and it's God who's transferred those powers onto him, and that's why he can do things that I can't do. And that's exactly the same reason that like a policeman can, you know, if he does a certain thing of like turning on flashing lights and driving somewhere faster than I'm allowed to do, then that's okay. Or he can drive through a red light and that's okay. Or he can tell me to just move arbitrarily, I mean literally, That's the way it works in Spain. There's a thing called, how would you say it? It's kind of like turns out into like a challenge to authority. If you get told to do something by a policeman and you say, well, I haven't broken any laws, it's like, no, you do it, you've got to do it. And that's just the way it works. You've got to do it. There's no like, otherwise you get in trouble. And where does this power come from? I mean, if you actually like really think about it, it is all just faith. That's why the state can exist, because it's just this chain of command. It's just faith. And what does that turn into? Well, when you've got like all the acolytes and everyone who believes it, like all the people are the believers, then they'll just go along with it, because like you don't want to be a heretic, do you? And that's just basically where we are. And the whole reason, if you see something like, if you've ever seen the original Conan film with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and there's this snake cult, and there's the evil priest who's in charge of the snake cult, and like he says to Conan, and it's years ago since I've seen this, but it's something like this. He says to Conan, you know what real power is? And so like there's all these there's people around the pit where the snake is, just standing there, like all these women, all in like their gowns and stuff. And he just says to one of them, child, come to me, come down to me. And she just jumps off and dies. And he said, see that? That's real power. And that's basically the way it works now. People get told to do something and they just go and do it. And it's like, I know everyone says if we didn't pay our taxes, if nobody paid the taxes, then, nothing would happen. And it's true. Because what are you going to do? But the problem is as well, is that there's so much brainwashing happened, and it is brainwashing. People are so indoctrinated that like, even if, right now in Spain, it's the level of corruption that's just like, even someone like me finds out about. You just know of, even like it's at the very top of government, like the corruption, like the actual suitcases full of money style crappy corruption that's going on. And it's happening, but people still feel like they're morally obliged to pay the taxes. Whether you believe in the state or not, surely there's a separation between like the just state and the unjust state. Like the kind of banana republic level of corruption that happens in like these Spain's a modern Western society. I just think though that the reason that you find out about all the corruption is twofold. It's like, one, the general voter just doesn't care, so they're not bothered because they do the same. And two, well, because it's kind of both of them hand in hand. So because of that, they don't really go that far to try and even hide it, because the media's in the pocket. So they don't really have to. If your only source of information is just watching telly and reading newspapers, then you don't really find out about these things. There's a whole justice apparatus that's sort of going through the motions, and it does tend to, if people are filing, raising a hand and like filing lawsuits because of certain things that are happening, then it has to go through the motions. But it's crazy the amount of times that like evidence just disappears from police lockups in Spain. It just happens all the time, where it's like a high profile case, or like there'll be the judge will make a mistake. Whoops, I made a mistake. I did some kind of whoopsie and I was meant to do this before a certain amount of time and I just completely forgot. And now, oh well, then we'll have to drop all charges, now we can go free. That happens all the time, you wouldn't believe it. just how often it happens. And so, you know, at what point do people just say, look, you know, this game's rigged. It's rigged against me. When I was walking the dog last night, I heard some screaming match going on outside. I don't know where. It was like inside some, like, an apartment. And a woman was screaming at a man, telling him that he had to vote. And that he had, you know, and he was saying, what am I going to vote for? And, you know, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I can't vote for them. He said, well, you just need to cast a blank vote. I was like, you know, do you get what you're saying there? It's just like, if they, the problem isn't just that we've got bad actors. You know, this is the whole, you know, the whole point of Lord of the Rings is like, nobody can have the ring of power. It's not about, oh, if we just had the right person holding the ring of power. You know, that wasn't what happened in the Lord of the Rings. It's like everyone who was in it, who was, you know, a hero, actually said, get that ring of power away from me, it's got to be destroyed. And that's just what the state is. You know, notice that I'm not saying, you know, if I ran it all, then everything would be great, because I could be some, you know, benign leader and I could do it all right and I wouldn't be corrupt. It's like, no. There's lots of levels to this. One, I don't have, the reason I don't vote is because I don't have the right to tell anyone else how they have to live. So, if that's what I believe about that, imagine the, like, imagine me, you know, proposing that I be the guy who's going around and saying, hey, why don't we all do this? Oh, and by the way, and if you don't, then all these guys dressed in blue are going to kick you in, because that's just the way it works. It's like, I didn't come to this, you know, these ideas lightly. You know, it's like, it instantly makes you unpopular with everyone you know, you know, because there's not many voluntarists knocking about, and basically everyone, you know, there are some, I know some people who I suspect are like definitely on the way. You know, if they're not already there, they're like on the way to being a voluntarist, just because of like conversations that we've had. But it's not a popular view. You know, people don't want to stand out like that. And so it's not something that you come to lightly. You know, it's difficult, and like in a certain way, you know, you do feel things, you know, a lot of things that you take for granted just start to crumble, because you're like, you know what, we can't have that, that just can't exist, because, you know, if you believe in self-ownership and, you know, you can't enslave people, and so that's why you just can't have a state. And then the problem is, when you do have a state, you end up at a situation where eventually you're telling people that you can't collect rainwater and you can't say certain things in your head, and you know, and if you don't respect some idea that somebody else has about themselves, if you don't affirm that with them, then you know, you're a bad person. And you know, maybe I could get behind, you know, I could get behind an administrative system that like you sign up to voluntarily, and like have an actual social contract that you come up and say, look, right, if you give me this, I'll pay you that, and I'll sign here. Oh, and by the way, I can get out of this contract, you know, by mutual consent at some point. Fine. No, I could go with that, but that is not where we are, because the state has got no right whatsoever at all to be telling people what's moral and what's immoral. You know, I firmly believe in right and wrong. I don't think that right and wrong is a state of law. You know what I mean? It's like, if someone's supposed to pay like X% of their income, and they pay X minus 1% and get caught, and then take to you know, jail or whatever, pay a fine. They haven't done anything wrong. They just haven't conformed with the law. I don't think that you're a wrongdoer because you've done something against the law. It's that's just kind of infantile. It's just like having rules in school. Some days you can wear trainees and some days you've got to wear shoes. And the day that you've got to wear shoes, if you wear your trainees, then you're a wrongdoer. You're morally bad. Well, of course that's just silly. But that's the way we are with the state. So anyway, my lunch is cooked. I am starving. So that's why I think that basically I agree for the first time, like fully agree that statism is a religion. It's got to be, because it's just the whole thing. There's the ceremonies, there's the robes, there's the blasphemy, there's the rituals. If you don't go and vote, when people ask me about, it's kind of funny, because people because of where Spain's history, they assume, like if I say that I don't vote, and not only that I don't agree with voting, then they assume that I'm some kind of fascist, and totalitarian. It's like, but the reason I don't is because I don't have the right to tell you what to do. So like, how is that fascist? And it's just kind of this strange spiral of, what's the next conclusion that I can jump to so that I don't have to think about this problem? And people, the thing is, people don't want to think. I know it's kind of, people like try and put across like, I'm so intelligent because I think about things, and other people don't want to think. That's not what I'm saying. I'm thinking, and what I mean is, people just want to live their lives, and that's fine. There's absolutely no problem with that. And people don't want to think about these issues that I'm bringing up here, which is absolutely fine. But where it all goes wrong is that these people who don't want to deal with all these things come along and then cast votes which give some sense of legitimacy to just like this charade that we're living. And so I don't know who this guy is who's not going to vote, but I hope it's because he's realised that this is just a mockery of what people say in the state, and the noble ends of why we do it all, and why we should have people in charge of us and making things better. And it's just a farce. It doesn't work. It's not working. And obviously the state won't let it. You can't have anything better come along while there is the state, because the state won't let it happen. Well, so the only way, I always say to people, oh, what are you going to change because you're not even voting? It's like, well, what happens when because currently less and less people are voting. What happens when it's the clear minority of people are voting? At that point, then there's some legitimate thing to say, look, if this is a democracy, we don't want that, so what's going on? You're clearly not legitimate, so, what are we going to do about it? Maybe that's something to talk about another day, of what could happen, what could happen in the absence of a state, because it's not impossible. You don't need you don't need a policeman on every corner to make people not steal. Because let's face it, we don't have a policeman on every corner. In general, people don't steal. So it's not like the state isn't this deterrent that everyone thinks it is. But anyway, I'll eat my lunch now. So thanks for watching if you got this far. And yeah, maybe like the video, subscribe or whatever, just to help me out with the algorithm. So see you soon.